President Trump is in the headlines for his tweet about South Africa, but despite what some media outlets say, the problem is very real. One America's Pearson Sharp takes an in-depth look at the country's new policy targeting white landowners, which many say is nothing more than institutionalized racism. And we want to warn our viewers, the following footage is extremely graphic.
There's a crisis in South Africa, and in a short time, it's grown from an isolated problem to a full-blown genocide. White South Africans are being murdered by the thousands every year in violent attacks carried out by blacks. It doesn't make headlines, but the problem is quickly spreading.
I think the government in South Africa can do more. They keep silent about this farm murders for a very long time. It's going on for a few years now, not doing anything.
It sounds shocking, but the president of South Africa has now passed a law that seizes land from his own citizens simply for being white and not black. While liberals in the media and other countries around the world are fuming over racism in America, they're absolutely silent on this dictionary definition of racism that's currently claiming thousands of innocent lives every year. But not everyone is turning a blind eye to the situation. Despite attacks from the left-wing media, President Trump sent out a tweet on August 22nd asking Secretary of State Mike Pompeo to investigate the problem. And South Africans who have been victimized by the government and seen their neighbors murdered say they appreciate President Trump's efforts.
We need the international community to send out a warning to say it is not in the interest of the country, it's not in the interest of the country's economy. Rethink your position, and I think Mr. Trump's tweet was a great start.
But not everyone is taking President Trump's tweet with enthusiasm. Julius Malema, leader of the extreme left group Economic Freedom Fighters, says President Trump should stay out of South African affairs.
Donald Trump is not saying anything we've not heard from white people in all the hearings. I even commented and said, I'm still to meet a white person who supports expropriation of land without compensation.
But since Malema is actively calling for stealing land from white residents, it's not surprising he doesn't want President Trump to interfere. It should be noted that this is the same man who has threatened a genocide against white South Africans and says they should be grateful black people aren't murdering them all right now.
We don't black and white. We don't care about their feelings. They've made us suffer for a very long time. Yes. It's our turn now. They must be happy. We're not beating them up. They must be happy. We're not calling for genocide.
White farmers make up a large percentage of the country's agricultural production, and by disrupting their trade, not only is the government destroying their livelihood, it's destroying its own resources as well.
If a farmer in South Africa is murdered, a farm is murdered, a community is murdered, and food security in South Africa is murdered.
Critics point out that South Africa is heading down the same path as Zimbabwe, which seized land from white farmers in 1999. The results saw white farmers flee the country, creating a devastating collapse of the agricultural sector and a famine that left millions starving. Unemployment soared to 90%, resulting in widespread poverty. Many white South Africans now feel like they have nowhere else to turn, and after seeing their families and neighbors brutally murdered by blacks, they're actively fleeing the country. So far, some 15,000 white farmers are making the move to Russia, saying it's a matter of life and death.
It's fact, we've lost 4 of our neighbors in the last 10, 12 years due to farm murders. My direct neighbor was murdered 4 or 5 years ago, and it's people very close to you eventually that gets affected. So it's a great concern to us, and I think it's something that government should look into and try and stop as soon as possible.
From 2016 to 2017, there were some 74 murders and 638 attacks on white farmers, a dramatic leap over the past 20 years. Some of those attacks were incredibly gruesome, but have become so commonplace they got no media attention at all. One elderly white couple had boiling water poured over them by black attackers. Another elderly man was locked in his truck by a gang of blacks who then set his truck on fire, burning him to death. A girl who was just 4 years old was raped by 3 men. She survived, but just long enough to be wrapped in newspapers by her attackers, who then poured gasoline over her and set the papers on fire. Another 3-year-old girl was first crucified on her parents' kitchen table and then raped while her mother was killed and her father had his throat cut. These aren't one-off cases. It's a growing epidemic that sees black South Africans specifically targeting white people. And these attacks are literally happening every single day. The situation is grim for white farmers in the country. With institutionalized racism taking hold, it's only a matter of time before seizing land becomes seizing all property, and attacks on Dutch settlers and their descendants is sanctioned by the government. While former President Obama praised the president of South Africa as being an inspiration for all his people, some of his people have a very different message.
And I want to say to Malema today, who is the big instigator of farm murders, I want to challenge him today. I will give him a rifle, I will load it, and I will stand still so that he can finish what they began.
Pearson Sharp, One America News.